They called her too weak for battle. Then she crawled out of the crater with a smile. The Kralix War Council had dismissed humanity's offer with barely concealed contempt. Commander Zethkar, his chitinous plating gleaming under the station's harsh lights, had pointed one clawed appendage at Lieutenant Sarah Chen and laughed, a sound like grinding metal. This is what Earth sends to negotiate an alliance? His mandibles clicked in amusement. We've seen your species' physiology reports. Fragile bones, thin skin, no natural armor. You break when proper warriors merely bruise. Sarah had stood motionless in her standard-issue uniform, her 5'4" frame dwarfed by the towering Kralix warriors surrounding her. She said nothing, her dark eyes steady. The Vrex Armada will devour your colonies within 3 cycles, Zethkar continued. You need us, but we don't take weak links into our battle formations. Your kind would shatter under the first barrage. The other council members had rumbled their agreement. The Kralix were the galaxy's premier shock troops, 9 feet of bioengineered muscle and bone plating, designed by their ancestors for eternal war. They'd held the Outer Rim against countless threats for 2 centuries. Prove your worth, Zethkar had finally decreed, or crawl back to your fragile blue world. That was how Sarah Chen found herself strapped into a drop pod, hurtling toward designation Hostile Zone 7, a moon where Kralix warriors went to earn their first battle scars. The test was simple. Survive 12 hours in terrain crawling with automated defense systems and hostile fauna left over from some forgotten war. Most Kralix came back bloodied, but alive. Some didn't come back at all. Sarah's pod hit the surface with bone-jarring force, plowing through crystalline soil before slamming into the base of a cliff. The impact harness dug into her shoulders hard enough to bruise. Warning lights flashed across her HUD. Structural damage, communications offline, and something about pressure seal. Integrity she didn't have time to read. She punched the emergency release and stumbled out into air that tasted like copper and ozone. The landscape was beautiful in its hostility. Purple-black soil studded with crystal, formations that hummed with residual energy. 3 moons hung in the jade-colored sky. Sarah checked her rifle, her water supply, her medical kit. Everything intact. She had 4 hours before the orbiting Kralix carrier would scan for her life signs. The first drone found her. Within 20 minutes, it came screaming over a ridge, a spider-like, construct of whirring blades and plasma ports. Sarah's training kicked in. She dove behind a crystal formation as superheated air scorched past her position. The crystal exploded, shards slicing through her uniform and into her left arm. She rolled, fired 3 shots, destroyed 2 of its sensor arrays. The drone adapted, flanking left. Sarah ran, leg muscles burning, her human endurance, not her strength, buying her seconds. She led it into a narrow canyon, let it get close, then triggered the emergency flare from her belt. The magnesium-bright explosion overloaded its remaining sensors. Her rifle finished the job. Sarah collapsed against the canyon wall, breathing hard. Blood ran freely from 6 cuts. She could feel her ribs grinding where the pod impact had cracked them. The Kralix were right about human fragility. Everything hurt. But humans had learned long ago that fragility wasn't weakness. She dressed her wounds with steady hands, drank water, checked her ammunition. Kept moving. The next 8 hours became a blur of survival. More drones. A pack of something biological with too many teeth. A minefield that nearly ended everything. Sarah bled, broke, and burned, but she adapted. When her rifle's power cell died, she fashioned traps from crystal shards and salvaged drone parts. When her leg gave out, she splinted it with debris and kept crawling. The Kralix had armor. Humans had something else. The stubborn, irrational refusal to accept defeat that had carried their species from caves to the stars. At hour 11, a seismic charge, triggered by something she'd failed to spot, detonated beneath her position. Sarah Chen fell into darkness. When the Kralix extraction team arrived at the designated coordinates, they found a crater 30 meters wide. Molten crystal pooled at its center, still cooling. Zethkar stood at the rim, his opinion of humanity confirmed. Unfortunate, he said to his second. But predictable. Log it as not, Commander. The sensor technician's voice carried a strange note. I'm detecting movement. In the crater, impossible. Nothing survived a direct seismic blast. The Kralix warriors peered down into the smoking pit. Something was climbing. Sarah Chen emerged from the crater like a wraith. Uniform torn and burned, left arm hanging useless. face blackened with soot and blood. She should have been dead. By every reasonable metric, she should have been vaporized. But she was smiling. That smile, bright and genuine despite split lips and missing teeth, made Zethkar's combat instincts flare in warning. It was the smile of a predator species that had clawed its way to the top of its food chain through sheer, bloody-minded persistence. Sarah limped toward the Kralix commander, movements hitching but deliberate. She stopped 3 meters away and spoke, her voice raw from smoke inhalation. 12 hours. I believe that was the requirement. Zethkar stared. His armor could absorb plasma fire that would liquefy organic flesh. His bones could withstand impacts that would pulverize stone. But this human, this breakable thing held together with nothing but determination and medical tape, had survived what would kill most Kralix warriors. Your species, he began, then stopped, recalibrating everything he thought he knew. You're insane. Sarah's smile widened. We prefer persistent. Now about that alliance? The Kralix War Council approved humanity's petition that evening. Not because humans were strong, they weren't. Not because they were durable, they were laughably fragile. But because the galaxy needed allies who were too stubborn to know when they were beaten. And because Zethkar had seen the look in Sarah Chen's eyes as she crawled from that crater, the look of a species that had spent 200,000 years refusing to die, and wasn't about to start now.